Hey, grown black folks talk. Megan the Stallion on the PBS NewsHour and what that really means. We're going to unbreak some news today. Now, I need you to really put your thinking cap on for this one. This is probably going to be grown conversation about Megan the Stallion on the PBS NewsHour and what it means. The segment, and I'll link to it in the description. And thank you to Nicole Jones and also content creator True Mystique for giving me the heads up that this had happened. Today was just not that day for me to catch up with PBS. But thank you for the heads up. The segment was about how the treatment of Megan Thee Stallion during and after the trial, after the verdict, highlights the problems of misogyny in the Black community. I'm not going to make commentary on the segment. You can watch that. What I want you to think about, and what I can give you as a person who was a professional journalist, who has a journalism degree, is the significance of this appearance. Let me break something down for you. My family has watched the PBS NewsHour. I used to come home from work editing newspapers and watch the PBS NewsHour when I got back home, and they had one more viewing at like 1:30 a.m. So I would roll in at 12:45 in the morning, and I would watch the PBS NewsHour as part of my wind down. Like I would edit news all day and then come back and watch news. But the PBS NewsHour public broadcasting system is on another level, at least KQED. But you might find that this holds across the country. This is where big time businesses, this is where big time nonprofits and big time white liberal politicians come and put news together and get news. If you watch the PBS NewsHour from beginning to end, they always talk about the people like you support it. It is for the public. But big institutions like BNSF Railway, big foundations are in their sponsorship. BNSF sticks out because shout out to Hobo Shoestring, content creator Hobo Shoestring, who rides freight trains. So I got to actually see from just watching his videos, oh, snap, every single thing. My dad was a longshoreman. So goods from China are shipped into the West Coast, but how does it get there? Freight trains. And BNSF is one of the biggest ones. He spends quite a bit of time going from different rail yards, and BNSF is a big deal. Big organizations, big institutional investors and investments. These are the people that put the PBS News out. Most of the time, they ignore our existence unless it's some kind of human interest or art piece. Very rarely do Black experts get to come on and talk about Black issues from any serious way. It is very much limited to how white liberals see themselves as solving our problems in general. Nonetheless, because we figure so little in the affairs of large capital and large nonprofits in general, and then you have to look at who is Megan the Stallion. When I was a child, 30 years ago, it was a big deal that Murphy Brown, a sitcom, a white woman, gave birth to a child out of wedlock on television. So it was the day of the Black woman being seen as the promiscuous crack queen. So the fact that this large outlet that features institutional investors and investments, big political figures, and big nonprofits tells you that something enormous must have happened over since that verdict. Something enormous must have happened. That means that the noise that is being made about this verdict has gotten all the way up to the point that someone thought it was important enough to have a segment. And remember who the segment was paid for. That's why I explained it first. See, most of the people who have a lot to say about this verdict, especially those who are against it, the reason that they are talking the way they're talking is because they don't understand this and how money flows. They don't understand this. The PBS NewsHour has come down on the side of Black women. It's talking about them being victims of misogyny. And if you think about some of the things we've heard in the news in the last several days, I live in California. California is doing a lot of stuff right now. There's a program for pregnant Black women in my area, which is about to be expanded. California is looking at it as a model. Some people in California are looking at what black churches managed to do 50 years ago, and there's at least one state senator who wants to encourage more of that being done through faith-based organizations. But the organization I'm secretary of the board for is being used as the model project. The state is considering, well, without going into all the details, let's just say the big liberal run states are looking at black people and looking at black women as being potentially the most productive of the two. In the previous years, you have, I know in Georgia, there are nonprofits that are giving money to help support black women with children. And then you have on the institutional investor side, you have Goldman Sachs that's putting out $1 billion to, how does this work out? There are $10,000 grants to 1 million black women, turning into $10 billion at the end. And then you have Grameen. Now, Grameen is a big, big multinational nonprofit. And the study on when you give microloans to people around the world, this data says give it to the men and they will use that money to cope with them not being able to do what it is they should be doing. Give it to the women and you actually will build up the community because women are going to take care of their children and they'll even take care of the men. So now Grameen has turned around and said in the United States, well, maybe Goldman Sachs is going to go front run. Maybe we also can begin to look at how we can assist black women. So there is a trend whereby institutional investment in and also nonprofit investment is going this way. But that also means that there's another trend going on because one of the institutional investments we don't talk about that people look at who are looking for sure dividends and ready money are private prisons. It is the height of hypocrisy for Anglo-Saxon men to call any other group of men misogynist, given their behavior over the last 500 years in the world. However, when you have control of the news organizations and you have the power, you can do what you want. Justice will catch up later, but it will be too late for a generation of black men. The attempts, the fruitless attempts to get Tory Lanez off when he was in the hands of much stronger forces out here in liberal California now. Understand that, like I said, you got all these white liberals taking a look at this. Tory Lanez was convicted in California. California turned around and came and got him. Megan Thee Stallion did not precipitate this. He was on apparently he was on probation and broke his probation, and California came and got him. Years later, California is one of the most deeply invested private prison states in the country. California is where my pastor, who was a parole officer, was at the meeting, and people in California were sitting around making decisions about how many jail cells there would be based on the number of black men, black boys who were in school at 9 years old. Those boys are now close to my age. Those boys are Tory Lane. So that tells you something, that white liberals, just as much as white conservatives, have just as much an investment in moving millions of bodies into prisons to replace generations of men that are now aging out from when Joe Biden was senator. And in a bipartisan way, managed to arrange the delivery of those bodies to prison. Joe Biden is a Democrat. So is Kamala Harris. Do you see where we going? Do you smell what the I should say here in American history, do you smell what Plymouth Rock is cooking? Do you smell what Plymouth Rock is cooking in the United States of America right now? See, when you get to the level of being on the PBS NewsHour, you have to understand something about Black life in America. We were bought here. People talk, in the crypto sphere, people talk about, Bitcoin is the first hard money. Okay, no. If you want to take it as spendable money, fine. But the first hard backing for American fiat dollars was black bodies. Period. There's no argument about this based on facts. And there are still people who are mad about the fact that they can't access all that free labor. You ever wonder why companies like BNSF are involved in labor negotiations, and Joe Biden is doing his best to put off a railroad strike. Because what companies are doing is seeing how close they can get back to that free labor model, because practically speaking, business was much more profitable when workers didn't have to be paid 160 years ago. But see, the thing about the United States is you only have to go back 100 years before black folks are up sewage creek without a paddle. And people talk about the United States may become Nazi Germany. No, the United States can become the United States of 1923, and the ashes of Black Wall Street will be smoldering, and the match is about to be lit in Rosewood. Literally everything that you think you have can be taken away. But it doesn't have to roll out quite like that, because what you see that's happening is if you have white liberals, institutions, nonprofit also. And see, shout out to, remember we talked about Kanye West and Kyrie Irving creating trouble? A lot of these large nonprofits have a very sizable Jewish presence. So that puts another nudge toward, and then the Anti Defamation League went on and put the Hebrew Israelites, which has these loud, forward men who also are very misogynist, uh, put them on the map for that, as terrorists. So if you look at what has happened, that confluence of people is making decisions about millions of us to whom we are still a form of capital. Make no mistake, Joe Biden and Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III had common friends and mentors in Robert Byrd and Strom Thurmond and Jesse Helms, Southern Dixiecrats who kept Jim Crow going as long as they could. But then they trained their boy to be able to make this profitable in the new era. So the United States probably will not revert to 1923, but it doesn't have to. You are watching the setup of the tacit agreement of a nation to join hands, right and left, on camera here, of reducing an entire population of people to either profitable, willingly unprofitable, and need to be put into being forced. You are watching the justification of that decision of division being made in front of you. That's what it means when Megan Thee Stallion, someone who would be classified in the branch of the Anglo-Saxon cultural branch of the whore, and then black on top of it. I'm not saying she is that, but I'm saying that classification just 30 years ago. The fact that they are choosing to make her the entranceway into talking about misogyny tells you that for the moment, black women are on one side of that division and black men are on another. This also tells you a couple other things. And I realize what I'm about to say might be called respectability politics, but I need you to get an understanding about something, okay? I'm not talking about respectability politics as much as I am as save your black behind politics and economics. I'm talking about keep yourself, your son, your brother out of prison politics. That's what I'm talking about. It is very important that you stop supporting degeneracy and especially coming out in public supporting degeneracy and looking stupid. It's very important as a black person that you do this because literally the big time investors that finance politics and news are beginning to openly move the story where they want it. And like I said, I'm not commenting on what was said, I'm commenting on where it is. I have watched that for now. I'm 41. I didn't catch it today, but I've watched that at certain periods every day and still off and on. As a black man, it behooves you. It is you're gonna be your life or death that you not get caught up. As a black woman, you're gonna have to really think about the there is more institutional opportunity for black women right now than black men, definitely. So you have to figure out who you're going hard for. I understand that content creator Paris Milan did a live today where a lot of black women, she asked black women to come up who supported Tory Lanez and disagreed with the verdict. And there were apparently, I did not, I watched about a minute of that. But I said I can't be around women who have the habits of people who will be in the permanent underclass with men who will be in the permanent underclass. That's kind of the attitude you have to have. As a woman going hard for men who have nothing to offer to change their own situation, say nothing of yours, this sort of recurs over and over again. A lot of black women went hard for Bill Cosby. Too late. They ain't getting none of that money. Camille's gonna have it. You're not in line anywhere around. R. Kelly, because people like his music. You ain't getting none of that either. He's in prison. He can't do nothing for himself right now. And now Tory Lanez is about to be sentenced. You have to stop going hard for men who don't do anything for you. And notice I'm not saying all black men, but black men who are into degeneracy, who are into producing children that they have no means of taking care of, and black women who allow themselves to participate in that. Big time people are looking at their investments for the next 10 to 20 years and are making decisions on these are the ones that we're going to shuffle off into the permanent underclass into prison. And these are the ones we're going to finance because they're productive to us. Please believe me when I tell you, everybody wants to talk about the recession that's coming and how it could be worse than the Great Depression and how the United States dollar could collapse. Do you know that if the United States needed to do it, it would put every single one of us back in slavery if it thought that it could save itself doing that? Given the United States' actual history, do you think that this would be a problem? If you do think this is a problem, you're not paying attention. 1/3 of black men are already felons. And again, that number is not what you think it is because it includes my father's generation, and most of them are not. When they leave, you're going to see something very interesting. Like I keep saying, you need to go read the 13th Amendment. Please understand that the United States can rebuild its investment base on the United States' first hard assets. You need to be careful. When black men have gotten up and defended a convicted felon, because he is now, and have shown that they go for that with the stats that there are, that says to large investors, cool, they about right. When black women get up in large numbers and defend that kind of behavior, that says to big institutional investors, they're about right. All we want for them, we'll let them be in a position where all they're gonna do is have more babies so we can fill the next generation of prisons. So we're gonna sit here and we're not only gonna have them full in 2030, but we're gonna make sure we have them through in 2050. Understand this: there are a whole lot of people of the Caucasian persuasion who are not pleased with the idea that they're going to be a minority. But understand in this country, but understand they understand how apartheid works. They understand that other communities of people, if they can successfully paint black people as degenerates, all of them will combine, meaning that they may be a functional minority, but other communities of sensible people will combine. Now, the question is, do you as a black person want to be counted among the sensible? Is it possible within a racist context? That's a different question. But if there is a chance, where would you like to be? It is really important. And I'm not talking about, because I know that any number of people, that's not even fair. We're not talking about the fairness. I'm talking about understand what way the wind blows. I'm talking about look at your real situation. Can you afford what you're doing as a black person right now in the long run? Can you afford it? Can you afford to give time to things that do not help you grow and learn? Can you afford to not do things that are good money decisions? Somebody said not too long ago, I don't dance no more. I make money moves. Hey, I make money. Anybody remember that? Can you afford not to do that? Can you afford not to keep up with what's really going on in news and in politics? Can you afford not to do critical thinking? There was a gentleman on Mr. and Ms. Milan's show talking about dotting his T's and crossing his I's. Can you afford not to go and plug whatever holes you have in your education down to kindergarten? Do you want to live as a free citizen in the coming 20 years? Is what I'm asking. When women who would have been condemned as black whores 30 years ago are being upheld on a PBS NewsHour because they stood up for themselves and they told the truth and they let a degenerate black man go to prison, that tells you there is a big division, that big time powers are willing to accept black women where they are, but they also are getting ready to scoop up a bunch of black men for prison. But it also tells you as a black woman that there's a certain moment right now that you can afford to support degenerate behavior, but that moment may not last. Megan Thee Stallion has gone back to school and gotten her degree. People see excuse me, y'all. I'm stewing some ginger and it's messing with my nose. Um, can you afford to support degeneracy? Can you afford not to abuse yourself? And if you're a black man in particular, like I said, the reaction was enormous enough in trying to defend this felon, a man who, after having, we can go beyond allegedly, found guilty, went up and is actually out here beating up other people, has problems controlling his anger. You can you afford to come out and defend that, given that you now know, as of this video, that large institutional investors and nonprofits and others are pretty much working together to line you up to be in prison. Can you afford to do that? I'm not saying that people can't believe what they believe. We're not even arguing that in this video. I'm just putting this out there for your thought. The times they are changing, as Bob Dylan sang a long time ago. You better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone. For the times they are a changing. The likes of BNSF, who ship goods that a lot of them, if they're made inside the country, are made by prison slaves, are getting interested in this topic. Please govern yourselves accordingly. All right. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.